welcome to the show today. We've got a really exciting guest here, Zain Kahn, and he actually is the VP of Marketing at CareGuide, a marketplace for care services that services 6 major verticals. In 2.5 years, just 2.5 years, Zain has helped the company scale its user base from 4 times from 1.5 million to 6 million users, all while cutting the cost of the customer acquisition cost by 75%. Quite an achievement, and looking forward to hear the story today. So Zain, welcome to the show.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. So do you want to tell me a little bit about yourself and your background?
For sure, yeah. So as you mentioned, I'm currently the VP of Marketing at CareGuide. CareGuide is a marketplace SaaS business, and we operate across 6 major verticals. To make that sound less markety, we basically think of us as an Uber and Airbnb for a bunch of different care verticals. So let's just say you're looking for a nanny or for a housekeeper or for a babysitter. You'll come to one of our websites and hopefully you'll find what you're looking for. We're a 2-sided marketplace, so it's both for employers and people who are looking for these services. And we've got over 6 million users at this point. And more specifically as to what I do, I lead the marketing channels, I lead the marketing team, I lead the budgets. So that's kind of like what my day-to-day looks like. And my key focus in the long term is just to like grow as fast and as much as possible.
Wow, that's exciting. How did you actually end up in this unique role with CareGuide?
I'll have to give a bit of a backstory then. So essentially, I'm born in Pakistan. I grew up in Switzerland. My parents moved there when I was a teenager, so spent like I guess a good third of my life there. I did my master's in the UK. I pretty much went to they're called McKinsey farms. So you go to like do a master's at like a fancy business school, and then you go to like a McKinsey or BCG or something, and that's kind of the career path that I was on. I went to Nestle, I went to the United Nations, I went to KPMG, and that's the career path that I was on. And frankly, it was just really boring. There's no better way to put it. Like you're a very small cog in a very big machine, and you get very good at being at this very small cog. But frankly, I just found it very boring. I just couldn't see myself doing the same thing over and over and over again for the rest of my life. So yeah, around the same time, I was talking to a friend who I went to college with. He just got into YC and was telling me about all the exciting things that he's doing with his life. Chanced upon 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel, amazing book. If anyone hasn't read it, I'd recommend it. And you know, we're going up in the generation of like Facebook, and the social network comes out, and I saw that movie and I was like, wow, like there's so much more I can be doing with my life here. So essentially just took a chance. I showed up to Canada with a couple of suitcases and a couple of $1,000 in savings, and kind of just got started out from there. And lucky to land a role at CareGuide. Knew nothing about marketing. So super fortunate that someone took a chance on me, someone mentored me, and as time went by, let's just say I found good, like, I don't know, employee company fit, if you can call it that. Awesome culture, awesome people, learned a ton, and slowly went on from being like an entry-level marketer to then being a senior to then being a director, and recently being promoted to VP. So that's kind of like a backstory to like what I've been doing.
That's awesome. And, you know, you've actually helped CareGuide grow their user base quite significantly. So what is your vision for CareGuide in the future?
Vision for CareGuide, honestly, it's CareGuide wants to be the number 1 place on the internet to find care services. So we've already taken the pole position in the nanny services market. So if you're looking for a nanny in Canada, CanadianNanny.ca is the best website to find a nanny, bar none, I'd say. And then our goal is to, take those learnings, take those best practices, take those growth models and kind of implement them into other verticals. So our focus going forward right now is to do the same in the cleaning industry. Like right now, there's over 1 million cleaners in the US and Canada. There's hundreds of thousands of people who are looking for cleaning services every day. But frankly, there's just no clean, clear, easy way to do this. And that's what we want to do is like be the number 1 place for finding both a housekeeping job and then also for finding housekeepers, cleaners, industrial cleaners, whatever else that might be in the cleaning segment. So yeah, that's what I'd say our vision is for CareGuide.
Interesting. And would you say that you were kind of like the disruptor in the marketplace when it comes to such services?
That's an interesting question. I think that definitely is the goal. I think a lot of people have come in and taken a crack at this across different care verticals. I'm not going to take any names, but there's definitely a lot of companies who've raised like a lot of big VC money, spent a lot on paid marketing, and they've just frankly just gone bottoms up and haven't made it, right? So I think it's definitely been an extremely hard space to crack. But as with any networks effect business, like once you crack the network effect, it's really hard to get to the network effect. But once you get there, like, oh my God, is that a great business, right? So we've definitely experienced that with our nanny and childcare business. And now we're slowly starting to see that in the cleaning industry side as we're focusing more there, right? Unlike any other business, like the fact is you're trying to get both sides of the marketplace to work. So you want the demand side to get what they want and you want the supply side to get what they want as well, right? And that's really hard. So I would definitely say we definitely did disrupt the childcare market in Canada. Like I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say that we played a big role in bringing that whole market online in Canada. And now the goal very much is to do the same in the U.S. and Canada for the cleaning segment as well. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely been similar startups that have gone down, and I think that there's it's a very competitive marketplace as well. So, what do you think is it that gives CareGuide that competitive edge or that unique value proposition that allows you to dominate your competition?
Interesting. Again, I don't know where if you're dominating a competition yet. That's another thing about network effect markets. It's like it's really hard to know who's winning this market, but when you look back in a few years' time, it's like it's easy to justify, hey, here's the company and here's who I won and so forth. So I definitely say at the end of the day, I think a lot of it just came down to founder market fit. And to just double click and explain what I mean by that is the fact that our CEO, like he's got an amazing story, right? Like he's just perfect for this business. So I hope he doesn't mind me sharing this, but I think back when he was in his early 30s, around the same time, he has a son, and then he also has a dad who's quite ill at the time. So here he is, John, our CEO, trying to balance both, looking out for his dad and also trying to watch out for his kid. And it's just really, really hard to find someone to look for both of them, right? So like he's a working professional, his wife's a working professional, they've got a kid to take care of, and then they've also got a parent that needs to be taken care of, right? So I think that's where John just goes like, damn, like this is way too hard. Like this shouldn't be this hard, right? And this has got to be easier. And I always find like when people are solving problems for themselves, they often create things that are quite nice, right? I mean, the cliched story of Mark Zuckerberg creating a social network for himself in his dorm room, the story of Uber of their ex-CEO just driving in a cab in Paris and then saying, damn, like why can't we do this on a phone, and other such stories like this. So I think the origin story for CareGuide is quite strong in terms of founder market fit. And I think it kind of continues from there. Like once you crack one market, then you crack another vertical and so forth. I mean, right now, to varying degrees, CareGuide's involved in about, I think, 25 to 30 different verticals at this point. We have 6 major ones, but yeah, we dabble in a bunch of different things. So that's what I'd say, like a strong founder market fit. And then obviously our CEO John's an engineer. A lot of our companies is like super technical engineering folks, and you've been really able to nail down that SEO flywheel. So I think that plays like a big role in that as well.
Interesting. So let's talk about how you actually grew your user base from 1.5 million to 6 million 4 times, over the past 2.5 years. It seems like it's a significant achievement for sure. And what were some of the biggest challenges that you experienced in tackling that growth?
That's an interesting question. I think I've definitely played a part in it, but I will say this, like this 100% is a team effort, right? When you're working in a product company, and especially if you're working in a tech company in a marketplace, like I don't think it's down to any engineer or any product manager or any marketer. Like everyone definitely has to work together to make sure that you can get a flywheel going, right? So I think the first thing that I want to point out to, I think that we nailed down is our SEO flywheel, right? I think most people like to think linearly in terms of funnels. It's like customer A comes in top of funnel, leaves bottom of funnel, and that's it. I think we definitely think about it as more of a loop. Like, hey, here's a customer coming in. Like, how can we keep them engaged, and how do we keep more of them coming in? So just to explain our SEO flywheel. So SEO, for those who don't know, is search engine optimization. It's basically you go onto Google and you search for something and you find it there, right? So the idea there is, I mean, we manage to nail our SEO by users come in, we take them through an onboarding flow, they create a lot of content, we then redistribute that content to Google, and it helps people find our website and helps people find services in their local areas, right? So I think we really nailed down that one loop. I think SEO is not just a marketing thing, it's a product thing, it's an engineering thing, it's a content thing, it all comes together, and I think we've definitely done a great job of doing that. I think similarly, we've been able to replicate another flywheel. I don't think there's a name for this channel yet. I don't think a lot of companies are out there are doing this, but we implemented that SEO strategy onto job boards. So users come in, they create a profile, and then we redistribute that profile to job sites. So let's just say, Munib, you're looking for a nanny, you come onto our website, you create a job listing, and then we just redistribute that job listing. So let's just say Glassdoor or Indeed or some other website. Other people see that, they come onto our website, and that's how we created like a second acquisition channel, right? And both these acquisition channels have been able to like bring in like millions and millions of users over time. So I'd say like those are the two key things. I think there's a lot of other stuff or smaller stuff around like paid marketing and so on and so forth. But yeah, those the SEO flywheel and then the job board acquisition flywheel, I think were the two major.
So it seems that you've kind of like mastered that customer journey or that funnel that customers go through to make their decision when they're trying to do business with you, in a way. Yeah.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I will say this as well. I'm pretty sure a lot of startups will make this mistake at some point, or a lot of growth stage companies will make this mistake at some point. Is it's really easy to see a bunch of acquisition coming in, like you're getting a ton of users and you're getting a bunch of paying subscribers, and it's easy to think you're doing a great job. But I think once a certain amount of time passes, I think it becomes abundantly clear if your product is sticky or not sticky, right? Like this is a SaaS business, this is a recurring revenue business. So the fact is like then you're confronted with the problem of like, hey, am I actually solving this problem for this user? And if not, then how do you create a better product and how do you create a better customer journey and an engagement journey to really, help them solve that problem? So I'd say like it's taken some time to figure all these things out. And frankly, I do think they are sequential. Like you need to nail down acquisition first before you realize that you might even have a potential problem, for example. But I think, yeah, definitely taken some time, but yeah, happy
I think one metric that really stood out to me is that you were able to reduce your customer acquisition cost by 75%. And a lot of companies struggle with that, with the raising costs of, advertising online and so forth. So how did you actually achieve that? Was it primarily through the customer journey or creating or designing a funnel around that? Or was it just investing in some different marketing tactics to bring that down?
Yeah, that's a great question. I chanced upon this sheer luck at the time, but we basically had a bunch of paid channels. We raised a bunch of capital, invested into a bunch of channels, and then it got to a point where the cost of acquisition is too high. Our CAC is hitting our LTV. And for those of you who might not know what that is, essentially means like the amount of money that you're spending to acquire a customer is far exceeding the amount of money that the customer generates for you over the course of their lifetime, right? So let's just say the customer acquisition cost is 100, the LTV is 100, and we're just like, wow, like we need to figure this out because if we keep spending like this, we're going to start losing money at some point. And essentially, I just started to segment on a bunch of things, and I started to say, hey, like I'm going to look at this by side of market, like what does an employer cost us? What does an employee cost us? What is the different cost in different cities? Can we chop this up by time of day and everything? It was purely a trial and error exercise to see if I can come across any insight there. And essentially what we figured out is like, yeah, like when this is after all a network effects business, so geography does have a major impact here. Some geographies our product has strong network effects and we have a lot of business coming in. In other geographies, perhaps not as much, I'd say. So I think optimizing it by geography, optimizing it by side of markets, optimizing it by a bunch of other demographic segments, that was a huge leap for us. So there were like a core of big cities like New York, LA, San Francisco, Chicago, the big urban centers where the network effects super strong because the population density is so good there. And then there's just a bunch of places in the middle of nowhere where there's obviously no network effect, and that's where most of our money was going towards. So I think just to kind of labor on another point into this, like if you're a marketer who's listening to this, knowing how to use a little bit of SQL or Excel and knowing how to just like chop up all of your data and segment your data inside out is just straight up a superpower. Like if you know how to segment your user base and understand them from every single angle, yeah, yeah, highly recommend
That's
everyone
right. And
early on in
I
their
always say
careers
that
should
data
learn a little
doesn't
bit of
lie.
that.
You have to understand the numbers, you have to understand the metrics, and really be very adamant in measuring those specifics. So when it comes to measuring that data and really, understanding the performance of your campaigns, were there any tools or platforms that you were using to track that kind of data?
Yeah, so when it came to data, like I think we built our internal platform just for like storing all of our data. It got really clunky over time. I think we've moved on from it now. But I think we just used a BI tool to go with it. So we used one, it used to be called Periscope. They've now changed their name to SciSense. Personally, I love the tool. It's just basically you put in a bunch of SQL and you can segment a bunch of data and see what you're looking for. Um, yeah, from a marketing perspective, there's different things, right? So for example, if you're a search engine marketer and you're running Google Ads, I think their platform does a good job of giving you good insights into what's going on with your customers. Similarly with Facebook ads, bunch of other platforms, I think Google has a bunch of their tools that help you diagnose what's going on with SEO as well. We also use software like SEMrush or Ahrefs to see how our competitors' SEO is doing, how our SEO is doing, places where we could be doing better. And yeah, that's kind of what I'd say is like all the
Absolutely.
different
One of the things that you
things that we
pointed out
use to
earlier
look
is that,
at data.
SEO has been one of the pivotal points of the success of CareGuide. And, Google's always making the online space more and more competitive and making it more challenging for business. How do you keep up with that?
Yeah, 100%. Oh man. So, I'll say this. 10 years ago or 15 years ago, I think building a company was really hard. But once you built a company, I think growing it was probably not as hard as it is today, right? So if you're looking to build a startup, like there's no such thing as no code, there's no such thing as AWS, like you need all these servers in your room, you need to be doing all these things. It's incredibly hard, right? Um, but today, like the situation's flipped, right? Like you can just go on and build an online app and hook it up to AWS and Google Analytics and Stripe and plug and play, and there you go, right? So I think it's still hard to build a company, but it's measurably easier to do it today. I think the key challenge today is to grow companies, right? And growth has become super competitive, right? So if you go back 10, 15 years, like this is the golden age of channels, right? Like you're getting Facebook, you're getting Google, you're getting Instagram. Like this is every marketer's dream, right? So if you're coming into this landscape and you're figuring things out, like holy cow, like can you not build a big business here, right? Like it's amazing. But I think the landscape's definitely shifted now, right? Like there's not as many new channels. There aren't even that many up and coming channels, and those where you are seeing up and coming channels, like let's just say for example TikTok, like creating an ad asset for Facebook, a visual ad for Facebook, is tremendously easier than creating a video and getting an influencer on board and running that whole process. So I will say this is, yeah, there's a trade-off with the ease of the channel that you're looking to get into and the distribution that you're trying to build, um, and like how sustainable that's going to be over time, right? So I mean, you can definitely try out paid channels. You can definitely try out a bunch of different short-term tactics, and that'll probably get you some traction. But if you're looking to build a big company, if you're looking to get millions of users, if you really want to have that venture scale, you have to do the hard things. And it's going to be an unsatisfying answer, but there is no playbook for doing hard things, right? I mean, sometimes you can look at your competitors and get some educated guesses, but mostly you just have to dabble in things and dabble in channels where there currently just isn't a playbook. I think Clubhouse is probably a good example of people who are trying to like jump in and dabble into new channels right now. But the next big companies are not going to be built on the channels of a decade ago. I'm pretty certain of that. I'm sure you'll see some exceptions there. But I think for the most part, if you're looking to build distribution, if you're a marketer, if you're working in growth, maybe even if you're working in product, yeah, I think you're definitely looking at at experimenting and doing a lot of trial
Absolutely.
and error
Yeah, no,
and
absolutely. It
finding
was a
new
very
forms of
comprehensive
distribution.
answer, and I think that
Does that
at the
answer
end
your
of the
question?
day, we have to also keep in mind as far as like how user behavior is evolving online. People are becoming more and more impatient. People are just used to better, more accustomed application. So how do you actually adapt to that? And I think that as any service provider, you have to keep those behaviors in mind for growth. So,
100%, 100%. I'll just add a small thing onto that as well, like a good framework for this. Pick this up at Reforge. For those of you who don't know about Reforge, Brian Balfour, bunch of other smart people from the Valley like have this course on marketing and growth. And one thing that I kind of picked up there is like a lot of like distribution is just getting someone to shift their habit from one product onto your product, right? So let's just say someone's on Facebook. Let's just say Facebook's your channel. You're trying to get them to shift their habit from Facebook onto whatever your product is. That's essentially what's going on at that point, right? Maybe someone's looking for something on Google and you have a product that you're trying to sell on Google. Could be a product, could be a service. You're essentially trying to transition their habit of using Google to get their problem solved perhaps, and you're trying to get them onto your product to get that problem solved. So I think that's a pretty good framework to go. If you're looking at a channel, don't just brutally think about like here's this thing called SEO or SEM or whatever else it might be. You want to think about like what is your customer actually doing on this channel? Like what are they actually looking for? And then does it make sense for you to try to transition their
Very
habit
good point.
off of
So
that
what do
platform
you see
onto
are
your
the
own
biggest
platform?
challenges for CareGuide over the next few years?
I think the biggest challenge for CareGuide is the same challenge that every startup has is how do you grow, how do you grow sustainably, and how do you grow profitably, right? In a way that solves the problem for your customers as you scale as well, right? So I would say again, acquisition is super competitive. It's super expensive. So I think it's about trying to find new distribution channels. Like, what is the next big wave of channels that we can kind of get ourselves into? So I'd say like we definitely caught the SEO wave. I think it's a lot harder to catch the SEO wave now. I mean, maybe if there's some tail keywords that you're trying to get into, maybe you could do something there. But for most of the big things, it's pretty expensive, right? So then the question is like, where can you find unorthodox forms of distribution that no one's looking at, where you can scale profitably at good unit economics, right? I think another thing that I would say is building retention within your product is also super important. I know a lot of marketers listen to this probably think retention is just something that the product focuses on. I would strongly disagree with that, right? So you definitely got some retention channels like YouTube, Facebook, whatever else that might be, but then you've also got engagement channels like email, right? Email for the most part in most companies will tend to be where you engage people, right? So someone's visited your product, you send them an email to remind them of the fact that, our product still exists, we're here to solve your problem, come back in, here's what we can do for you, whatever else that might be, right? So the fact is like, how do you strategically use your engagement channels to then keep people coming back to your product, right? And then there's a certain, I would say, sweet spot for this as well, right? Like if you're sending way too many emails, that's just straight up spam, right? The customer's going to forget about you or they're going to put you in spam. But if you're not sending them enough engagement, they're going to forget about your product. And you're leaving money on the table. So I think there's definitely a sweet spot to be hit there. I think as I go along, I'm learning a lot about how to, bring people in. And finally, I would just say like as a company, I think it's also about finding the right talent. So I don't think universities do a super good job of training marketing talent. I mean, I didn't graduate all that long ago. I graduated like 4 or 5 years ago, and digital marketing was maybe like 5 pages of my marketing textbook. Like online marketing was just one big channel, right? Like that, they just call it online marketing. and honestly, I didn't learn about any of this stuff. I just did like 1 3-month course and that was it. And I didn't learn anything about it. So I think, how do you find talent? How do you bring them in? How do you train them? And then how do you scan for the best talent inside the market, right? So, I mean, the reality of being a startup is that you can go for the really high tier talent, which obviously goes to places like Facebook and Uber and whatever else that might be, whatever like the big bad company in your space is. So finding the right talent, identifying it early on, and then training them up to, not only work on the channels that you currently have, but then put them in the mindset of like, hey, here's how you experiment, here's how you look at data, here's how you identify new opportunities. I think that's
That's true.
definitely
Yes.
like
Yeah. No, definitely very
a
important
challenge
points
that
there. And you're right. I mean,
exists
universities,
at
they're
this
a
stage
bit
of the
behind in
company.
terms of marketing because marketing is such a fast-paced, industry right now with especially digital marketing. It's such a turbulent environment out there right now that things are always evolving, always changing. So it's hard to keep up and and let alone teach others. So that's interesting. So when it comes to like you've come a long way in the past few years, and if you were to give advice to your younger self, let's say 5 or 10 years ago, what would that advice be?
I'd say the first thing I'd say to myself 5 or 10 years ago is just to follow my curiosity. Right? I think what you're trying to do either as a company or as an individual is to build your competitive advantage, is to build your differentiation, is to stand out from the crowd and say, hey, um, I am better because here is how I am specialized in a certain kind of way, or here's how I can do something better, or whatever else that might be. And I think you just have to be honest about what you like doing and where you like spending your time,
Mm.
because where you like spending your time and whatever you do naturally is basically what you're going to end up doing well in, right? So as I look back, I definitely forced myself to do a lot of things because I thought that was the right thing to do. And I think a lot of that comes down to the fact is like when you don't know what to do, the easiest way to figure out what to do is just to look at other people and basically take other people's doings as what you should be following in life. So I would definitely say if you're out there and you're listening to this and you're like, yeah, like what should I be doing, focusing on for the next 5-10 years? Yeah, see what you like naturally, see where your curiosity goes, and honestly, yeah, just follow it as much as possible. Frankly, don't worry about making money off it. I was reading books about technology and startups and all these different things 5-6 years ago in college. I had no idea I was going to be in tech. I hadn't even considered it, but here I am working in tech. Similarly with channels, I know that we are in the age of data and very quantitative marketing, and maybe you're someone who's a good storyteller, and you're looking at all of these people who are doing like very measured, like paid marketing kind of stuff, and you're like, damn, like I need to be more like this. If that's not the stuff that you're naturally inclined to spend time on, like don't worry about it. Like if you're a good content marketer, if you can tell a good story, oh my god, is that a powerful skill set to have, right? So don't worry about it, and vice versa, right? Maybe you're a quantitative marketer and you look at someone who's a great storyteller and you're like, oh my god, I wish I had those people skills or whatever else that might be. Don't stress it. Play your own game, get good at that game, and the returns will come. Um, One or two other small things that I'd say as well is um, dealing with failure, I think, is quite important. I think all of us live in a culture of success, and I think we always see other people's successes. Whether we're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all we're seeing is other people win. I think that kind of glosses over the fact that you have to go through a lot of failure, and there's a lot of trial and error to figure out what works for you. So I would just say um, learning what works is just as important as dealing with failure. So like if early on in your career, especially, um, if you're not happy at a job, don't look at it as failure. Just move on to the next thing and keep moving until you figure out what you like. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think that's a failure. And linked to that point is if you're young and you're figuring something out, like don't be afraid of a little bit of unpopularity with your peer group, right? Like I went to all these people who were super driven, super smart, super ambitious, and all of them went into like investment banking and consulting and so on. And here I am trying to make it in startups, and I definitely had like some of my friends like made a little bit of fun of me, right? And then that kind of puts you in self doubt. It's like, oh my god, should I be doing this? Does this make sense? I could be earning so much money. I could be doing this, that, and so on if I was in this other thing. But like, I mean, if you're following your curiosity, if you've got a plan, if you're having fun,
Great advice.
yeah, don't worry
Thanks for
about
that,
your peer
Zain.
group. Don't pay too
So,
much attention to it.
based on your
You'll figure
experience
it out.
and challenges that you've overcome, if there was one big takeaway that you have for our listeners today, what would that be?
Hmm, that's a great question. Again, I'd link it back to the fact is like be curious, nurture your obsession, learn to play your own game, and be the best at whatever your own game is. I think this was not possible 10, 20, 30 years ago when the internet didn't exist. But like now that we are on the internet offers an infinite number of niches. Like if you've got an obsession, if you like something, if you're into a certain marketing channel, if you like data, if you like product, if you like building your own audience, if you like doing podcasts, if you like writing, there is an infinite amount of niches. So all I would say is, yeah, I think this also applies to both companies and individuals. I mean, every day we see startups that are unbelievably niche, turning into monsters. I mean, Airbnb is a good example, right? Like, who wants to build a company for hosting design conferences? Like, that makes no sense to me, right? But I mean, here we are. It's an insane and amazing company. Like, I love their product. I love their company. Like, it's amazing, right? Facebook, right? Like a dating profile for college, and that only applies to Harvard. Like, that makes no sense. But essentially, just some guys and girls following their curiosity, scratching their own itch, and building something amazing. So if you've got something that 10 people like, you're onto something. Because if there's 10 people who like that, I guarantee you there's 100 people who like that. If there's 100 people who like that, I guarantee you there's 1,000 people who like that. So yeah, don't be afraid to don't be afraid to be niche, and don't be afraid to nurture your obsession. And final thing that I'd like to say is just have a strong bias for action. I think preparation is super overvalued these days. If you're a marketer or if you're building a company, back in the day, if you messed up your product launch, like that's it, you're dead in the water, right? But we're on the internet now. There's no cost to launching a product. There's no cost to launching an idea. Like you can keep doing it over and over and over again, right? So don't worry about failure. Just keep launching. Just keep having a bias for action. And yeah, don't worry about like having like the perfect start. It's overvalued. You'll figure it out as you go along. I think the number of tries that you get on
Great,
goal
great.
is way more
So where
important
can
than how
people
good your shot
find
is.
you and,
So
and
definitely take
learn more
advantage
about
of
you
that,
as well as
and yeah,
CareGuide?
just try to have a strong bias for action. Well, CareGuide, yeah. I mean, CareGuide.com, that's the best way to find us. You can find us on Facebook as well. If you're looking at some of our biggest sites, I'd say go check out CanadianNanny.ca for all of your childcare needs in Canada. And if you're looking for cleaning services, housekeeper.com is our website for the States and Canada. If you're interested in talking to me, I am on Twitter. I'm not super active when it comes to posting, but I'm super active in having conversations. So my Twitter handle is here_ZK, so HERE_ZK. You can find me on LinkedIn as well, and yeah, you can follow me on Instagram as well. You can follow me at Zigzag Zain, so Zigzag.
Excellent. And we'll include your contact information in the description
I'll
of
share
this
a lot of
podcast
like
as
my
well.
thoughts on marketing.
Zain,
and other
thank you
things on
so
there.
much
Yeah,
for taking the
feel
time here
free to come
today
in
and giving
talk to
some
me.
valuable insights on marketing to our audience. It's been such a pleasure speaking with you today and learning so much about how you've actually backed and helped CareGuide over the past few years. So we wish you the best on your journey in the future, and take care. All right. So.
Yeah, glad we could chat. Thanks for having me.